Welcome to the Author Corner, our chance to meet the authors you'll want to read. I'm Stephanie, and I'm so excited today to be joined by author Michael Perone. We're discussing his novel, Déjà Vu, A Kid's Nightmare. 12-year-old Bobby Dalton doesn't want to grow up. All his life, he has relied on the imaginary games of childhood with his best friends, Joe and Max, to get him through the tough times. But this all changes when his seventh grade class buries a time capsule to commemorate the end of the 1980s. Now Bobby is being haunted by visions, ghostly doppelgangers of himself, his friends, and others. He calls them Déjà View. Are these visions real, or has his imagination finally gotten away from him? And if they're real, what do they want? Bobby needs to figure this all out to survive his childhood and his life. The award winning author of Déjà View, Michael Perone. Thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled. And as a child of the 80s, I just started reading your book and I was right back there.
Uh, yeah, a lot of people say that. Yeah.
You definitely nailed the error. That's for sure.
I tried.
Well, before we dive into the book, tell me a little bit about you, where you're living and what you're doing.
Well, I live on Long Island. Um, my main job is an editor, but this is kind of like my side job, writing novels. Something I always wanted to do. I started out as a journalist, actually. I used to work for a bunch of magazines and newspapers like the Baltimore Sun, Baltimore City Paper, Long Island Voice, which was a short-lived spin-off of the Village Voice, and Island Ear, which became the Long Island Press. You might know that. But I always wanted to write a novel. I always wanted to write fiction. Um, but like most writers, I've been writing, stories since I was first taught my alphabet. And I used to try to write an entire book and try to fit an entire novel on one page, see if I could do that, do a giant story to fit it to one page. They were all
Wow.
terrible, of course. And I was doing this, when I was like five or six, seven. But I didn't really start writing a proper short story until, unfortunately, after my brother passed away when I was 8 years old. I was trying to basically explain the experience of what happened to me and what happened to my family through a story. And that story eventually became my debut novel decades later, Danger Peak. I don't know if you can see that there. That was my first book. Um, but I'm a kind of a writer who I write, to explain life to myself because I happen to find life very confusing and occasionally terrifying. So that's how I got into the writing biz.
I get that. I get that. That's amazing and heartbreaking about your brother, losing him so young. Are your parents creative types that they channeled you into doing that during such a traumatic time?
Uh, I don't want to insult them and say no.
It's okay.
But my mother was always good with English. She was basically like my second English teacher. Had she grown up in a different time, she definitely would have been uh an English teacher. My dad, he's well, he's retired now. He was an inspector for JFK for American Airlines. So if a plane crashed, it was his fault. But luckily on his watch, they never crashed. But the reason why bring that up is because he's kind of OCD like me. He's very good with details. He was an inspector because he could always find the problem. He could always say, okay, this is, and no one else could figure out what's wrong with this. That's the problem. And that's one of the reasons why I became an editor, because I could always spot the mistake. Like even, you know, professionally published books. Even when I was a kid, I would read poetry books and other short stories and said, hey, wait a minute, they spell this character's name differently on page 8 than from page 1. What are they doing? It's like, and if I'm noticing that at 8 years old, how are these, big time shot New York editors not noticing that? So if I got anything, I got that, my editing skills from my dad, my writing skills from my mom.
Got
They
it.
know, and it's funny you should mention that. You said, oh, did they tell you to channel your trauma or whatever, your energies into writing? Because they didn't, but I would do it anyway. And then years later, I tell the story to everyone. 2003, my world kind of fell apart. I lost my job. I lost my girlfriend. I lost my roommate. I lost my apartment, all in less than a year. And I had to move back home, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my mom said, "Well, you should be a writer." And I said, "I don't really want to do that. That's kind of cheesy." and it's kind of a dream. And she's like, well, that's what you do. It's like when you were a kid, you used to go up into your bedroom and you write story after story. I didn't tell you to do that. Your father didn't tell you to do that. You did that on your own. I said, well, that's a good point. It's like I told myself to do that. It's like maybe that is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know. It sounds cheesy and pretentious, but that's what happened.
Hmm. I love that. So they did inspire you, even if they didn't inspire you by being writers themselves.
Yeah, I guess so. You could say that. Yeah.
That's okay. Well, tell me about Déjà View. How did that come about? Was it a dream? Was it
Well, you're kind of close, actually.
Okay. Oh, I love
Uh,
that.
it's a long story. I'll try to be quick.
Oh no, that's
Uh,
okay. I love that you had a dream.
well, Deja View is basically about the highs and lows of growing up. Maybe it's mostly lows. But to me, what I was trying to do is, when you're growing up, it seems that the people around you are becoming other people. Your family seems strange. You're wondering what you're doing with them. Your friends start drifting away, joining other cliques. You yourself are going through puberty and changing. But in my book, in Bobby's world, Bobby's the main character, the people in his life are literally becoming other people. So that was the sci-fi metaphor I was going for. Um, Other than that, this is my second novel, like I said, after Danger Peak. And while Danger Peak was mostly about the joys of the 80s, I kind of want to write about the darker side of the
Mm.
80s. So they kind of like link that way. And they both have, like you said, you mentioned at the top of the show, they both have subtitles. Danger Peak is a kid adventure. Deja Vu is a kid nightmare. So they're
Oh,
like
yeah, gotcha.
spiritually linked that way, but they're not. Deja Vu is not a direct sequel to Danger Peak, but the kids in Danger Peak make a very brief cameo in Deja Vu. It's like one or two sentences, so if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. And the last thing that Deja Vu was about was kind of like you mentioned again at the top of the show about the 80s, the time shift from the 80s to the 90s. They're burying a time capsule in this book to commemorate the end of the 80s. And this is what happened in my childhood. Grew up as a kid in the 80s, and I literally became a teenager in 1990. I turned 13 in 1990. So, and I noticed that in the years that followed, that television was getting more cynical, movies were getting more violent, the music was getting heavier and harder, like grunge, and I didn't necessarily like the way things were going. And I also remember thinking, wow, this is really on the nose because I was suffering through my adolescence while the cult pop culture around me was getting much harder and darker. So it's like I almost feel like I'm like one of the few people who could write a book like this. It's so specific to that experience. But getting back to, I said it's a long answer. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
But getting back to the dream. Um, you said if it came to you in a dream, uh, I'm one of those authors who I don't like starting to write the book until I know where it's going. I don't want to waste my time. I also don't want to waste the reader's time, obviously, but I want to make sure that the story is worthwhile. I want to make sure there's an ending. So I had two-thirds of the story of Deja Vu in my head, but I couldn't figure out the ending. And, not to keep bringing up the master of horror, but Stephen King said, when you got an idea, but you don't know exactly how to follow through, you don't push it, put it to the side, work on something else, do something else, and then maybe it'll come to you. So that's what I did. But it took like a year, and I was really annoyed because I really like the idea of Deja Vu. I kind of like it a little bit better, the idea at least, than Danger Peak, my first novel. But again, couldn't come with that with the ending. And then one night I went to sleep. I had a dream. I woke up. I said, "That's the ending," and I started writing. But sometimes, your best ideas come to you in your unconscious.
Absolutely. And I'm with you. I'm the type that I cannot start something unless I know how it is going to finish. Uh,
Yeah.
I look at people who are those, pantser writers that
Oh
just
yeah.
sit down and start writing and they don't really know where things are going to go.
How
That's
do you
so
do
not me.
that?
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
I'm
It's.
jealous too. I'm jealous too, but I'm far too type A OCD for
Well,
that.
maybe that's what it is because when I was a kid, I guess I wasn't so OCD because I could do that. I could just let's just see where the story takes me. Then again, I had a lot more time when I was a kid. I didn't have a
Mm,
full-time job. I didn't
right.
have a family to raise. But yeah, like I could tap into that childlike imagination because I was a child. Like, and that's why I have a few author friends who do. Oh, well, just see where it takes. I'm like, how do you do? I used to, be the opposite. When I was a kid in class, the teacher used to say, first you gotta outline your story, right? First you gotta do Roman numeral I, introduce the characters in the conflict. Roman numeral I, develop the characters and escalate the conflict. I was like, oh, I hate doing that. I don't want to do that. But now I have to do that because if I don't do that, I'll lose my place in the story. And again, like I said, I don't have that much time. I don't want to waste my time. More importantly, I don't want to waste the reader's time. This story better have a point. It's better. This story better go somewhere.
I think there are good points. I'm very jealous of those people as well, but I think that there's good points about both sides. I think people like you and I should occasionally try to free write or at least just free imagine, so that we don't put ourselves into a box. But I think that those other people could use a little planning once in a while, because
Yeah,
they probably get to the end of their book, and I've heard this from others, that they have to go back and realize, oh,
hmm.
I left this open-ended. Oh, this character went a different direction. I have to rewrite this scene or whatever it might be. So I
It's
think that there's things from both sides to learn.
yeah, it's great to have the best of both worlds, you know. It's find a happy medium.
It is.
I'm not there yet. I'm trying.
But I agree. I could not start, chapter one typing unless I knew how this was going to end. But then
Yeah.
again, I can't watch a movie or read a book without knowing at least the bare essentials. Like if everyone's going to die at the end, I really can't want
Uh,
to,
yeah, that's tough. Are you one of those people who reads the last page of the book
I have
first
done
before?
that before.
That's
Yes, I do.
yeah.
I
I'm gonna
admit.
ruin it for you, but I guess you don't want to say that you wasted, a week or
Well,
two
it's
weeks
it's
reading a
not just
book.
wasting. I think it's a little bit of emotional preservation for me.
Okay.
Um, I don't want to, get so sucked into a character that if they die, I'm just left bereft and wailing on the floor. I
Wow.
know that the
You really get
authors
into
love
it.
that. Trust me, I get that.
Yeah.
I know an author would love to think that I'm like, motionless on the floor because a character was killed, but oh my gosh, when it happens on television, I don't know what's going to happen. Poof. I'm
Uh, there was it's funny you should say that about being left on the floor or whatever, because it was my third book is a collection of, I might as well plug it since I have it here.
Please plug away.
Collection of dark short stories called The
Oh, look at
Electric
that
God
television. I
and other
love that.
shorts. Yeah, and it's won 4 awards there. And my favorite review, I should remember the guy's name. I don't remember him, but he said like Perone is a master at letting us know the possibility of the art of the literary gut punch. And I love that phrase, the literary gut punch, because I actually was trying to do that. I have
That's
to
it.
admit, on a few stories, like this is gonna get them. This is when they get to that last sentence, they're like, "Oh, that's what the story was about." It's like I love because it's short stories, at least for this, not for all my books, but for the short stories, I like twist endings. So there's a lot of twist endings in that book, The Electric God. So I like pulling the rug out from under the reader.
I
Like
love
you,
that. And I do love
yeah.
it when a writer is able to do that to me, that I say, "Whoa, I didn't see that coming."
Yeah, and you get jealous sometimes. You're like, I should have thought of that.
Yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
steal that for my next book. No, I'm just kidding.
There we go. There we go.
They say
Well,
good writers borrow, great writers steal. Is that what the phrase is?
exactly. So now that we know that you're a planner when you're writing,
Yeah.
and I know this was your second novel. Now,
Yep.
tell me, did it go smoother than the first? Is there hope for people who
No.
do that? No, not at
No.
all.
Well, like I said, this is the most, difficult book I've ever written because I
Well,
could
you
not
waited
get to
a
the ending.
year to find out how
Yeah.
it was going
Well,
to
that's a
end.
good point. Like once I started writing, that's a good. I would say it was harder because it was longer.
Okay,
It's a lot
okay.
longer than Danger Peak, and it's covering more ground. Danger Peak was for me was like, can I write a book? Can I write a novel? Because I
Gotcha.
never did that before. And once I found out I could, I'm like, okay, what can I do now with this? Now that I know I can do it, let me stretch myself, and I get different opinions here. I would say it seems like the general consensus is that Déjà Vu, people tend to enjoy Déjà Vu more. Like I said, it's covering more ground. Danger Peak takes place over like a month, maybe a
Mm,
month and a week, not counting the epilogue. Déjà Vu takes place over a year and a few months, but it
right,
has to because the whole thing is about growing up. Now, if I
right.
was a better writer, I'd have it take place over like 4 or 5 years, the actual years when you're growing up. But like, I didn't know how to do that. I don't want to waste the reader's time. Like, how much detail do you want to go into? It's like, so I got the highlights. When I was writing this story, I should actually say when I'm writing a novel, I usually try to answer a question. So for Danger Peak, my question was, what would be on top of a supernatural mountain? And I knew the answer, but I wrote the book anyway. Deja Vu, my question was, how exactly does childhood die? We know the broad strokes, but I'm a very detail-oriented person, as I said. I want to know exactly how it happens, and I didn't know the answer. So I went back to my old diaries and I read them, and I also happen to have a very good memory about this time in my life. And I actually got the answer. At least it was my answer. It's not going to be your answer. It's not going to be Tom, Dick, and Harry's answer. But I'll tell you, how does childhood die? It dies a little bit at a time and then all at once. That's how it happens. A little bit, little bit, little bit, and then it's gone. So first you don't believe in Santa Claus anymore, and then you don't want to go on the playground anymore. Then your friends start drifting away from you, and then you don't want to play with your toys anymore. And then one day you wake up like, oh, I'm not a kid anymore. And as I was writing this book, it was kind of all my books are therapeutic apparently because it teaches me things about me that I forgot or I didn't know. It reminded me, like, I think I had an experience like this when I was 14. I was a very, very, very late bloomer. Like, I was still playing with my G.I. Joes at 14 years old. And then I remember one day, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is dumb. This is stupid. And then I started thinking, like, how my friends were kind of drifting away from me because I was still playing with G.I. Joes. But I didn't want to go on the playground anymore. And I thought to myself, oh, I guess I'm not a kid anymore. So, but you don't realize it at the time. Like I said, it's little by little. It's like death by a thousand cuts. And then one day you wake up, I'm not a kid anymore. So, that was the answer I found writing this book.
And that is so true about Santa Claus and
Yeah.
about little things. And
Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny.
isn't it funny the
Yeah.
dichotomy between little kids wanting to be all grown up and
Oh,
then
yeah.
when a kid
Adults
grows
wanting to
up.
go back.
Exactly, exactly. I'm hearing you talk and I'm saying, not sure I grew up yet, but sure.
You're still playing with your Barbie dolls? Now it's sad because my kids now are 10 and 13, and obviously my 13-year-old doesn't believe in Santa Claus anymore. But this past Christmas was the first year my youngest daughter did, and she's 10 now. Like I said, she just turned 10. And she's like, that doesn't make any sense. How can he, go all around the world and one night? But only like 2 years ago, she was arguing with my older daughter saying, that's because she did believe in Santa Claus. And my older daughter was trying to convince her, no, there isn't. Because my older daughter was saying like, how can this guy go to every house? And my younger daughter says, he doesn't go to every house, only the good kids. He doesn't go to the Jewish kids. They don't believe in Santa Claus. Like, so she was trying to rationalize it, and I thought, oh, it's so cute. But of course, now, over.
Ugh,
Doesn't believe in it anymore.
well, I
But
don't know.
she tried to pretend like for our sake, like, oh,
Right,
thanks,
right.
Santa. You could tell she didn't believe in it anymore.
My kids are in their 20s and they'll still ask for what is Santa going to bring them.
Well, that's cute. I like that. I hope
They'll
my daughters do that
they'll
years from
they'll
now.
keep it alive for as long as they think I want it
Oh, to give
alive.
them gifts.
Well, I mean, there's that because
Yeah.
if
I didn't
there's
think of
some
that. It's a
mythical
money-making
creature,
scam, Santa Claus.
right, if there's some mythical creature giving gifts, they're all about it. I mean,
Yeah.
why would you give that up?
Yeah, that's funny.
That's for sure. What are you hoping when somebody reads Déjà View? Are they hoping like my reaction of, wow, I grew up in the 80s, I'm getting this. What are you hoping people are coming away with?
As long as it's a positive reaction, I don't really care.
Yeah.
But no, seriously,
I
I
mean,
guess
it
yeah.
is sadder than your, like you were saying, than your last book, The Nightmare. Do you want them to have that feeling of a happy ending? What's your goal?
I want readers to be entertained mostly. Books are supposed to be entertainment after all. And these days there's so much competition for our attention. I mean,
It's true.
the internet alone, social media alone, I think there's now 1,000 cable channels without exaggeration. I mean, how many streaming services are there out there? So like, if you're gonna write a book, and that's, a reader is putting a lot of trust and faith in you, because
Hmm.
that takes it's a lot more time commitment, obviously, and it's a lot more effort reading a
Right.
book than just sitting down passively watching a TV show. So I try to keep that in mind as a writer and as a reader. I don't want to be bored either, and it's hard. It's not, even if it's your story is going to have those scenes of people just sitting around talking to each other. You have to. So, but even during those scenes, I try to keep it as entertaining as possible. I don't want to dump on other authors, but there are other authors I like, and I would read a story and it'd be like, "What are you doing this weekend?" "Oh, I'm not sure. I think I'm going to that party." "Oh yeah, Harry's having that party." "Oh yeah, I like Harry." It's okay. You're boring me. So you gotta
No,
hype it
you're
up a
right.
little bit. You gotta make it a little bit sharper, the dialogue. So yeah, so being entertained. Also, I want, and you mentioned this a little bit before about growing up in the 80s. I want people to start to think about their own childhood, about their own adolescence, whether it was difficult or not. Probably was difficult, and to be proud of themselves for having survived it. My book. I've had people tell me, like you said, that the book took them right back. Even many women, I guess, like yourself, obviously, but that surprised me because there aren't too many female characters in the book.
Right.
Um, Maybe that's one of my flaws as a writer because it's hard for me to think of what would a woman or a
Mhm.
girl say in this situation. I'm like, oh, I'll just make it a man. Just make this character a boy. Um, But no, at the end, there is a major female character at the end, but she comes at the end.
Hmm. I like that. And now you're plugging some of your other books, and I definitely appreciate that. So what's next for you? I know this is your second full novel, then you had the book of
Yeah,
short
yeah,
stories.
Electric God.
Yep.
Um, so I have another book, as you know, it's a romance. It's my first romance, so I'm kind of nervous about that. Not sure how that's going to be uh received. But I mentioned like I guess I'm trying to work on my own flaws. Like I mentioned just before in your last question, like
About
most of my
not having
books,
female
yeah, I don't
characters.
have many, but this one has a very, very major female
Right.
character. She comes fairly early in the book, and she's all throughout the whole book. So I hope that's going to help me with the ladies, because
Exactly.
I have a very masculine readership. I'm trying to get the ladies on board.
Okay, okay.
There's also a few spicy scenes in there. I had beta readers tell me, "Whoa, I wasn't expecting it to be this spicy, so maybe I should tone it down." I'm like, no, don't tone it down. You want people to read it. Don't tone it down. But after that, I'm currently working on a semi-sequel to one of my books, which I swore I would never do a sequel. I'm a one and done guy,
Hmm.
but I'm working on a quasi sequel. It's not a direct sequel, but it's kind of like how Déjà View is a quasi
Right.
spiritually linked book to Danger Peak, even though it's not a direct sequel. So that's what I'm working on now.
Why would you, and I'm just surprised that you would say I'm a one and done kind of guy. I really didn't see myself doing a sequel. Why? I'm not pushing either direction. I've never, I think in hundreds of interviews, had someone so committed to the standalone novel.
Yeah, I know you like series. Maybe that's one of my flaws. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's not a flaw. There's nothing wrong with it. And I know many series writers who will occasionally write standalone novels, and there are
Yeah.
many standalone novelists. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it quite as emphatically as you. So I'm wondering what makes you feel that the standalone is better for you and your writing.
I think because my books aren't, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'll answer your question. My books aren't very character driven. They're very plot driven. They're very idea driven. Like I said, I don't start writing the book until I have the idea fully formed in my head and I have the ending. So once I got that beginning, middle, and end, once I got that idea, I'm like, okay, that's it. That's the idea. There's no more story after this. Credits roll. That's it. Not to say that I find sequels cheap, but sometimes it is like a cash in. It's like, well, they like this book. Let's do another book with the same characters, even though it has nothing to do with the first book, or it's not as good a story as the last one, but this is what people want. You want to give people what they want, but I also, this is gonna sound pretentious. I want to have some integrity too. Like if I
Yeah,
don't feel there's a story there, I'm not gonna write it.
I totally get
With the
that.
semi-sequel, I felt, well, there's some story there, so let me work on that.
Well, let me ask you a question about movies. Do you watch movies or television or anything like
Yeah.
that? Do you like sequel movies or are you not a fan?
I mean, it depends on the sequel. I mean, but you can count like on what, two or three hands how many really good sequels there were. Like that's how I feel anyway. The original usually, not always, but usually is better. I mean, it's the famous example, Godfather 2. Um, Dark Knight was better than for me anyway than Batman Begins. Um, you know, I'm trying to. Here's a controversial answer. I actually like Gremlins 2 better than Gremlins 1, and everyone
There we
thinks I'm
go.
crazy for that. But it to me, it took the concept of the Gremlins to its logical end conclusion because the whole point of Gremlins is like they're KI, they're messing up the world, and the second movie is pure anarchy. I mean, it begins with a cartoon. Hulk Hogan interrupts it. They keep breaking the fourth wall. They make fun of the first movie. Like it's like that to me. Like they knocked it out of the park with the second movie. So I'm looking forward to the third one. I heard they're working on a third one, so
There
looking
we
forward
go.
to
So
that.
some series writers are doing okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, there's no hard and fast rule. There are many movies that I liked that are absolutely one and done. The story came to its logical conclusion,
yeah.
and really, we don't need to see what happened 10 years later or whatever. It
I
is what
mean,
it is.
yeah, like City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold. It's like, oh, Curly's back, but I thought he died. No, it's his twin brother. It's like, come on, there's a
Yeah,
reason why
well,
that movie didn't do as well.
I mean, Hollywood does have a tendency to bring people back from the
Sequelize.
dead when
Yeah, it's
there's
money.
cash in them
Yeah,
their hill.
absolutely.
Yeah. And that's another question for you. How much I hear you speaking about wanting it to be a good reader experience. You want the reader to like and I am so on board with that, of course. But how do you balance what you want to write with what you think they want to read? Like you put in that racy scene in your new book, and your beta reader said, keep it in, keep it in, keep it
Yeah, that's true.
in. Did you
Um,
want to put it in, or did you put it in at first for your readers, or did you put it in because the characters were hot for each other and it was a
I
perfect time?
Well, a little of both. I mean, like I said, it's a romance, and obviously romance is going to involve sex. If not, you're doing it wrong. But to answer your original question, like, do this is a bad answer.
There are no
It's
bad
not.
answers,
No,
Michael.
it's not the right answer because I know the right answer. But when I start writing, I'm not thinking really that much about the reader,
It's okay.
first
There's
at
no
least.
wrong answer here.
I'm thinking, what do I want to read?
Good,
Especially
good,
Déjà View.
right.
Maybe Danger Peak was a different story. Danger Peak, because it was my first book, I was trying to impress people. I was like, okay, I really want people to like this book, and luckily they did. But I think that's why I like Deja View slightly better because I was like, okay, pretend no one exists. Pretend it's just I'm the last. It's like that famous Twilight Zone episode where he's the last guy in the world with the glasses, and he breaks the glasses. All he wants to do is read. I was like, what if I'm the last guy in the world? That's what book do I want to read? And Deja Vu was the book I want to read because, like I said, it's hyper specific. It's like, it's really, this is going to sound pretentious, but I was trying to write the quintessential coming of age novel for my very specific generation. People who grew up as a kid in the 80s, but then the 90s came along and you became a teenager and everything got dark. That's why I wanted that
That break.
separation. I wanted the burning of the time capsule, and also the book is very schizophrenic. It's very, well, I should say bipolar,
Right.
because the first half, which is very autobiographical, it's the most autobiographical thing I've ever written. Not just scenes and situations, but even specific lines of dialogue that my friends and I would say to each other. That was what I call the normal half. And then the second half is when everything goes crazy because it has to. It's a sci-fi novel. You don't want to bore people by taking a stroll down memory lane. But I like that idea. I like that dichotomy. And not everyone likes it, by the way. I've had some reviews saying this was a very weird book. I was enjoying the coming of age story, and all of a sudden it becomes a science fiction though. But what I tried to do is I tried to have the science fiction themes kind of like refer back to that first normal half. I had an unwritten rule that I didn't even realize until after I finished the book that if something came up in the first half of the book, it better come up in the second half.
Okay.
Because like I said, the first half is very autobiographical. It's much more slower moving, but I wanted that connection at the end. Another one thing I was trying to do with the book is I was trying to give readers a feeling of like they were in a car that was slowly going off a cliff. And in the beginning, it's like you're having a pleasant drive. Like at the beginning of the book, it's literally kids on the playground. But at the end, they're like at each other's throats. And that was the arc of the book. Not to give too much away, but like it's like how do you do that? How do you, like again, how does childhood die? I wanted people to be like, hey, this is not going necessarily where the characters want to go. Try to stop the car. And I was very gratified when my best friend, after he read the book, took him a while to read the book, but after he finally read the book, he came up to me. He's like, I felt like when I was reading the book, I felt like, I was in a car and someone was slowly pressing on the gas pedal. And I said, that's exactly what I was trying to do. This is why we're best friends. We're, same minds, And I was like, I was so happy that that's exactly what I was trying to do. And we were talking about pantsing and plotting before. You say like the pantsers, they go back and say, oh, well, maybe I should take this out. I actually did kind of do that with Deja Vu,
Okay.
where there was a chapter that I really loved. It was very funny. It took place on field day and everything goes wrong. But it was during not the boring, but the autobiographical normal part of the book. And my beta readers were saying it's taking too long to get to the crazy stuff. It's taking too long to get to the science fiction stuff. So I said, all right, and I cut the whole chapter out. And it was heartbroken, but I'm like, they had a point because I read it back. I'm like, yeah, it does slow the book down. There's also a scene from another chapter, again, first half of the book. I took that scene out. I like the scene, but if it doesn't move the story forward, it's got to come out. You got to kill your
Right.
darlings, like the famous
And
phrase.
and good for you for listening to your beta readers. Too many people either don't get beta readers because they acknowledge that they weren't going to
It's
listen to them
perfect
anyway.
the way it is,
Right.
straight from
People
my
are in
brain, from
love
God
with
to my
every
brain
word of their book. No,
to my
good for
page.
you. Good for you for listening, especially with questions of pacing, because I think
Yeah,
that we can be our own worst judge of pacing because we love every word that it says. And
yeah,
if the pacing is off, you're losing your readers. You're absolutely right about that.
yeah.
No,
It's
I'm
hard.
glad to hear that. Well, I do want to share with our viewers one more time, Déjà View by Michael Thomas Perone. You will definitely want to grab a copy. And yes, do you have your other books there as
Yeah.
well?
So here's Danger Peak, a
Danger
kid
Peak,
adventure.
fantastic.
One more time. Here's the second novel, Deja Vu.
Yep,
And my third and last book so far, The Electric God and Other Shorts. It's a collection of dark short stories. It's kind of like Twilight Zone-y twist endings. Great
awesome.
Bradbury.
Love all of that. Thank you so much for joining me. And
Sure. Thanks for
for
having me.
all of our viewers, you'll definitely want to check out his work. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you very much.